My check 1 2 1 2. It's the Y2K collector, and people might be secretly waiting for the best opportunity to sell their collections. We saw a massive run up in the interest in retro video games and in video games in general. People were collecting everything from NES games all the way up to PlayStation 5 games, and it's been wildly popular. Companies are making a lot of money from all of the collecting that's been going on. But on this channel, I've often talked about what is the end game? What's the end game for your collection? Is the end game to just collect and collect endlessly until you are no longer on the planet and then your collection just withers away? Do you intend to give it to a family member once you hit a certain point in life? Are you going to give it to your children? Are you going to give it to your nephews? Are you going to donate it? Or will you eventually just wind up selling the entire collection? And for a lot of people who don't have children or don't have anyone to give their collection to, I would think that their end game is going to be to sell their collection eventually, right? Now, obviously, we're all at different ages and different stages and different phases of our collecting journey. You have some people who have been collecting for 20, 30, 40 years who have massive collections of all types of stuff, right? And maybe if they're in tune with their collection, they know that maybe there are certain games in their collection that they'll be able to resell, and there may be other parts of their collection that they won't, right? Just because the interest won't be there. And so it's going to vary, right? I think in large part, your ultimate end game is going to depend on the makeup of your collection. It doesn't necessarily mean that your collection has to be made up of very expensive games or really popular games or highly sought after games. It doesn't mean that. It just means that based on whatever you have, you would have to then, look at the market and then set your expectations on what you think you'll be able to do with that collection. For some people, maybe they don't want to get any money out of it at all. Maybe they want to donate it. Maybe they'll want to donate it to their local retro game store. Who knows? But I do think that for some collectors, depending on where they're at in their journey, in their collecting journey, they are considering what their end game is going to look like. Now, collecting habits change all the time. It's just the nature of collecting. If you're a collector, right? Some people, they go from collecting baseball cards and football cards to collecting Pokemon cards, or Magic the Gathering cards, and that's just going to change as people's interests change. And so you might see a segment of the video game collecting community sell their collection because they want to get into other things. Maybe they've been, bit by the Pokemon card bug and they want to build funds to get into Pokemon card collecting. And so they might start selling off their video games to be able to fund their new collection that they're trying to build. As a matter of fact, there was a guy who had a retro game store, and I think he got interviewed by Phoenix Resale. And I think that was one of Phoenix Resale's most widely viewed videos. And when he revisited that game store owner, that game store owner actually said how he was, actually starting to move away to a degree from, video game sales, video game pickups, things like that. And he was actually moving more towards Pokemon cards and things like that because that's where the money is. And so, you may see that. You may see that from people whose tastes may just be changing in terms of their collection. As for me, my collection is staying with me. I think I have a little bit of a different end game for my collection. I have something, pretty unique that I think I want to do with my games. Once I kind of hit that point where I'm, ultimately good with the games that I have. There's more things that you can do with your collection than just selling it or trading it. You can actually use these games. You can build your own library. You can find creative ways to share your game collection with others. And so those are some of the things that I've been thinking about with my game collection. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to sell any of my video game collection at some point, but for certain games, for certain titles, for certain systems, there's definitely a plan that I have in the background. And even me, when it comes to collecting, I have focused on different things at different points in my collecting journey. There was a point where I was really hyper focused on PlayStation 2. Then there was a point where I was really hyper focused on 360 and PlayStation 1 and Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo. Last year, I sold off a lot of my, well, actually, maybe 2 years ago now, I sold off a huge chunk of my Switch collection to focus on retro. And now this year, I've said that I'm going to start getting back into the Switch. So things change all the time. Um, but I think the main thing is, again, what's your end goal? Are you thinking about the end goal, the big picture, the large long-term picture? What does that view for your collection look like? And I think it's going to be different for everyone. No one can tell you what you should or shouldn't do with your collection. That is a very personal thing. It's a personal mission, and I think all collectors will have to figure that out on their own. So let me know down in the comments, what is your long-term goal for your collection? Are you waiting for the right time to sell? Are you secretly just holding and waiting for the next boom so you can offload all of your games? Are you planning to give them to your children? Do you plan on donating them? What is your long-term goal for your video game collection? And with that being said, I did want to honor a request from a subscriber in one of my most recent videos. They wanted to see my Sega Saturn collection. So I'm not going to do a super in-depth review of my Sega Saturn collection, but I will do a quick drive-by of my Sega Saturn collection, and maybe I'll dive deep into that a little bit more because they were really interested in my Sega Saturn games. So let's start right over here. I kind of keep all my Sega Saturn stuff up here mixed in with the Dreamcast and Sega CD. But as you can see, for my North American Sega Saturn collection, I've got Dark Savior, X-Men Children of the Atom, Astal, Three Dirty Dwarves, Batman, Burning Rangers, Die Hard Arcade, Guardians Heroes, and Herc's Adventure, along with House of the Dead. Most of these games are either beat 'em ups or action adventure games. Three Dirty Dwarves is kind of a side-scrolling beat 'em up. Same thing with Guardian Heroes. Street Fighter, X-Men Children of the Atom is a fighting game. Dark Savior is a little bit different. It's more of like an isometric kind of RPG style game. Batman is a side scroller on the Sega Saturn. Astal, same thing with Astal. And then we've got a couple of 3D like action adventure games. Die Hard Arcade is pretty much a 3D beat 'em up. And then Burning Rangers is kind of like a 3D platformer on the Sega Saturn. So a very interesting one. And then you've got the House of the Dead games. Along with that, you've got the X-Men versus Street Fighter Japanese version. I can't pull it out there. I've got it tucked away all the way up there. In here, you have Dynamite Deca. This is essentially the Japanese version of Die Hard Arcade. You've got Dungeons and Dragons collection, pretty cool beat 'em up. A whole slew of shoot 'em ups. Sonic Wings is a shoot 'em up. You've got Cyberbots, which is a pretty cool fighter. This is available on the Belt Action collection. You've got Layer Section, Metal Black, Radiant Silvergun, Batsugun, Skullfang, Cotton 2, Dodonpachi, Donpachi, Hyper Duel, Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter, Assault Suit Lanos 2, Wolfang, Soulkuroi, I always butcher that name, but that's this one. These, for the most part, are all shoot 'em ups. Darius Gaiden, Thunder Force 3. I think this is Grand Kingdom, and I can't remember which one that one is, but these are another two shoot 'em ups here. So my Sega Saturn collection is primarily made up of shoot 'em ups, beat 'em ups, action games, side scrollers. That's really my focus. I've got a couple fighters in there. But that's really what I focus on with the Sega Saturn. Same thing with the Sega CD. I mean, shoot 'em up, run and gun shooter. This is a shoot 'em up. This is a shoot 'em up. And then you've got a couple random RPGs in Lunar 2 and Vey. So same thing with the Dreamcast. I primarily focus on shoot 'em ups and beat 'em ups. That's where my attention is. Those are the types of games that I really like. So I know that was pretty quick. I'll try to do one a little bit more in depth if you really want it. But that was just to answer a question that I got from one of my subscribers. Again, let me know what your end game is for your collection. What are you going to wind up doing? Will you sell? Will you keep your games? Will you give them away? What are you going to do? Let me know, and I'll catch you in the next video. It's the Y2K Collector. Take it easy.